Getting ready to change the body bushings on the cab. So I'm gonna get the tires on so it don't fall on my head. Get those mounts loosened up. Here we go. Got my new body mount kit from LMC. Dig this thing out. Ready to change them. So I took this thing off the jack stands, got it on the ground so it can't fall on us. I'm gonna loosen the mounts for the cab, then we'll jack it up and change one or two at a time. That's the plan.
Look at that. Like champ.
So the plate goes on top. And this goes on the bottom. Once it started, let the weight on. So I'm going to measure in several places to make sure the cab is centered on the frame. The gas tank is in the way on one side. I can measure from the rocker into the frame. However, rockers are not always exactly the same, especially like this one. One side has had a rocker put on it. It may not be in the exact same place. It's an aftermarket panel. So you want to go from known points, such as seat belt holes, holes in the frame, things that there's one on each side in the exact same place. Or like here is the center line. I've got the center line marked. I can go from one side and measure, go to the other side and measure. Just any spot that you could find to measure to make sure the cab is centered on the frame. All right, I got the cab on there. It's squared with the frame. I'm going to tighten it down. I'll probably check again to make sure it didn't move when I tightened it, and then we can move on to the next step. It's probably a good idea to X the frame out while you're under there. It's kind of hard to do sometimes with a tape measure. You can do it. You measure in several different places, middle of the frame to the front corners in an X pattern to make sure they're the same, make sure your frame's not bent. That's always a good thing to do. I'm just gonna get these started, get it a little bit snug, but we won't tighten it up until we put the fenders on. Get all our clips put on. First thing we'll do is get all our bolts started. Once we get all the bolts in, we'll get the fender lined up. I lined these doors months ago, so we're not going to deal with the doors. There's really nothing to show since they're already aligned. We have the cab squared on the frame, the doors are aligned, and now we're going to get the fenders lined up. First thing I look for is the center body line. I'm going to get that first. What I'm going to do is put a shim under here to raise the fender up. Right there is pretty close. There's a gap. I can't just tighten it down. I'm gonna have to put a shim in there. So let's do that. All our bolts are in, but not tightened down. These in the front, not tight. Doors closed all the way. wider on the top, tight on the bottom. So we got to get one and then try to set the other. Now right now I can move the fender in and out. It's sitting on the shim, shimmed on the bottom. So I want to get it fairly flush. This point right here is pretty crucial. You want to get that just right. Good. Our width is pretty good. Let's tighten it down right there on the top and then see what we can do on the bottom. We'll tighten the top first since we got it pretty close on the top, and then we'll see if we can adjust the gap on the bottom. So this is pretty close. I think I might need to widen it just a little bit. So what we'll have to do is pick up on the front of the fender. This is tight. That's going to let this stay the same and this open up. Shouldn't have to put much pressure on the front at all. We just need to lift it up. If I had somebody here to lift, I would have someone do it. Since I don't, I use the jack. You can see it's already opened this gap up. So now I can move it a little bit. Where I want it, right in this bottom bolt. So our body line dropped down. Gap's a little on the wide side, so I'll probably loosen everything back up, re-shim this, start over. So that opened right up. Push it back a little bit if I want. So I'll get the gap that I want, tighten it down. Seems a little bit wide. It's kind of wide all the way around. So I'm going to leave it there. What might make a difference is when I put the cowl panel on and the hood to see where it lines up then. See what kind of gaps I have on the cowl panel and the hood. So the bolt in here, we need to tighten that down. Now you'll see that it has a gap. If I just tighten it down, it's going to misalign our fender alignment on the outside. We just need to fill this gap with a shim so that it doesn't close up when we tighten it. All right, we got this side done. Everything's lined up, tightened down, just like I want it. Let's go do the other side. So on this side, I cut out the upper rear mount to fix some rust behind it. I think when I welded it back in, it's a little off, so we're gonna have to get creative on this side and make it fit. All right, on this side, so it's tight at the top, wide at the bottom. We've got this one snug. I'm not sure if it's gonna be where I want it in the end, but it's a good start. And now I need to close this gap. I'll show you how we'll do that. So on the other side, the gap was tight on the bottom, so we put the jack under the course board and just lift it up a little bit on the fender. Well, on this one, it's wide. So on this side, to close that gap right there, I'm gonna put a jack under the body mount and lift it real slow, and we should see our gap start closing. Closed it up. Tighten it down. After some beating and banging, still seems just a tad wide to me. Then I'm gonna try to close it up a little bit more. I'm gonna X this thing out again, make sure it's square. Then I'm gonna tighten these down. That may bring my gap a little closer like I want it. This is not tightened down. It can move quite a bit. So we need to get it square. And that closed it up just a little bit. So that's the gist of getting your fenders aligned to the doors. Still got to put the cowl panel and the hood on. We may have to swing that front end a little bit by loosening these bolts down here, moving it a little bit to get that squared up. I don't think that'll be a problem. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt in the inner fenders, the wheel wells. Now the more stuff you bolt in, the harder it is to move down the road. So by now you really want everything pretty much where it's gonna be. Let's get those wheel wells in, see how it looks.